You may have thought it was an off week in the world of golf, but you'd be wrong. You would be really, really wrong, especially here on Breaking Even, because there's so much to talk about. We've got a loaded show. Barney Allery is going to join us, as he always does. Luke Elvey is going to give us some commentary on the world of Australian golf, because, as usual, Australians are taking over the world of golf. Craig Winters from the USGA. He's going to join us on Breaking Even to clarify some of the amateur rules changes that were made. Dan Nathan, Guy Adami are going to join us to discuss what exactly is the metaverse. How do I access the metaverse? What is the metaverse? I don't know. And, of course, Jonathan Coachman, as always, the coach, is going to be with us to give us some picks and props and head-to-head matchups. So welcome to Breaking Even. And, by the way, remember to get involved with us on Twitter. I'm at Ned Michaels. You can find us the Breaking Even Pod. And, of course, Barney Allery is at Simplifying Golf. Barney, let's get right into it because we do have a lot to digest. Let's touch on Bermuda this past week on the PGA Tour. Nice win by Lucas Herbert, young Australian player who you may remember. It's probably this past summer. I posted a video clip on Twitter saying basically this is the sexiest stinger in the game right now. And he deploys it well. He wins in windy conditions down in Bermuda. This is a good young player, this young man.
Yes, evidently he sure enough is. And our good friend, Ewan Porter from Australia, he'd also brought to our attention to keep an eye out on that young man. And also, speaking of said Ewan Porter, congratulations to him as he's now gotten engaged. And maybe with any luck, we'll meet that sweet young lady, but I'm sure that they are very thrilled and very, very happy.
Hey, Barn, you know at the weddings when they say forever, stand now or forever hold your peace, there might be a lot of people standing up trying to warn this sweet girl off of, you can't marry Ewan Porter. No, in all seriousness, so happy for Ewan Porter. And you're right, he did say, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, that Lucas Herbert would win on the PGA Tour this year. So well done, Ewan Porter.
Yeah, and then in the meantime, Canadian Taylor Penrith, that he played great. He just recently got married, shoots a 61 in the first round, so evidently all is well and happy for him. But unfortunately for him, in the final round, in very, very difficult conditions, it just was not meant for him to be. And then also Danny Lee also had a nice little charge. When it's all said and done, Lucas, congratulations, you did get it done.
Yeah, that Penrith is a long hitter, former baseball player. So on this golf segment, not only are we going to touch Bermuda, we're going to just skip on Mayakoba. I've got a funny story, Barney, from the World Series Game 5. By the way, congratulations to my hometown, well, my original hometown, Atlanta Braves on winning the World Series. Way to go, gentlemen. Out of nowhere, really. Weren't even 500 at the All-Star break, which is going to bear a, not I am so stupid, but people are so stupid. Greg Norman is doing what Greg Norman does. Jordan Spieth didn't play, and he got better. So a lot to discuss. Mayakoba, new sponsor, Worldwide Technology, comes in. And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, because it is a cool destination, this field is pretty loaded with big names. Justin Thomas, defending champion Victor Hovland, Abraham Ancer, Finau, Koepka, Reed, Sergio. I mean, there's a big-time field down there.
Oh, yeah. And personally, anytime Justin Thomas is going to play in an event, let's just say that I'm going to give him the first opportunity to lose. So I'm thinking he's going to get it done, and can't wait to find out.
Looking at past champions, you get Hovland last year, Brendan Todd, Matt Kuchar, Patton Kizzire, Perez, English, McDowell, and back to 2012 even, you go John Huh, who was, Barney, the last man you will remember to go through at the time all 4 stages of PGA Tour school to earn his PGA Tour card. And then the next year they changed it where it went to the Korn Ferry Tour. But John Hahn went through pre-qualifying, first stage, second stage, third stage, got his PGA Tour card, and then converted into a win on the PGA Tour. So that's what's going on down there in Mayakoba. All right, let's get to this Greg Norman story, because this is a story that we thought was dead. And not only, Barney, is it not dead, it's alive and it's gaining momentum.
Yeah, so sure enough, another segment of ours, because Ned and I are susceptible to just creating segments straight out of nowhere. And so, but another segment not going away, because not only is this not going away, it has all of a sudden seriously taken traction. And so for those who don't know what we're talking about, Greg Norman has now been named the commissioner of what we're going to call the Super Golf League. And the Super Golf League is going to be financed and backed by those fun-loving Saudis. But in the meantime, this Super Golf League, well, you know what? This is not their first attempt at wanting to get a footprint in the world of golf, because it was just last year, as I recall it, that they were floating around the Premier Golf League. Now, how and why they kicked to the curb the Premier Golf League and call it the Super Golf League, I'm sure that means a lot to them. I'm not sure what the big difference is, but anyhow. But in the meantime, what it all amounts to is that now the Saudis are making a strong financial investment, a strong push, not only in golf, but also in boxing, MMA, soccer. But when it comes to the golf portion of it, it's my understanding that the Saudis are looking to invest $200 million into the Asian Tour over the next 10 years. They've chosen Greg Norman as their commissioner. They're looking to put together about 25 events, and 10 of which are supposed to be considered like premier events. You remember Premier Golf League? But anyhow, but the big question is going to be, can Greg Norman convince current top world golfers to basically not play on the PGA Tour, get off the PGA Tour to play onto this? And that's going to be the big catch, and I don't think he can do it.
Barney, do you know what this means? It means I'm back. I'm back. I still have status on the Asian Tour, past champion status. I am back. If you're playing on the Asian Tour, you just hit the jackpot, you think. You don't know if it's actually going to come to fruition and you're actually going to have these events, but what an opportunity. Greg Norman, I hope not only does he start to strengthen and bolster golf in Asia, I really hope he turns his attention to Australia, because over the past really decade, their lineup of tournaments has been decimated. It used to be you'd go down there, you'd play in at least 2 Korn Ferry Tour events. You'd have the Australian PGA, the Australian Open, and maybe 1 or 2 other events, and it was a great rotation. But this year-round golf now here in the United States, where there's tournaments to be played in the PGA Tour, it has really hurt their tournament rotation down in Australia. So I hope Greg Norman eventually turns his attention to his home country. There's one thing that concerns me, well, there are a lot of things actually, Barn, that concerns me about this, but just looking at Greg Norman's track record of outside of his own apparel lines and his wines and these kind of things, golf course design, when you start looking at, he was the first person really to bring up, at least vocally as a top #1 player in the world, this idea of a world golf tour. And he had the right idea, but he wasn't able to deliver. You start looking at his commentary career 1 year and kind of didn't deliver. And there's been a couple business ventures. Remember, you talked about it. He was gonna change the way golf was played, and it ended up being like a video system on a golf cart. So it didn't quite deliver. So he's a big name. He still carries a lot of weight in the world of golf. But the question is, will he deliver? And will people play? Will they go play for the money that Saudi Arabia is putting up, or are they going to have some type of moral conflict? There's a lot of questions here that still have to be answered in my mind.
Well, because from the PGA Tour side, Jay Monahan, who runs the PGA Tour, they have taken a firm stance that, let's just say that they are not welcoming the potential of what the Saudis are intending to do, because it's my understanding that when you are a PGA Tour member, I think that there's a little more reciprocity with European Tour events, but the Saudis have now affiliated themselves with the Asian Tour. But like I said, I think there's a little more reciprocity with European Tour events. But in the meantime, it's my understanding that you can get like 3, not exemptions is not exactly the right word, but
right. Well, when they waive you, you can go play in an event while a PGA Tour event is going on. You can play in an opposite tours event. And
basically, Jay Monahan, I think, has flat out come out and said, look, you're either a member of our tour or you're not. Because I think that Greg Norman's fantasy dream, and potentially the Saudis as well, is the idea that guys can crisscross and play either one. And then I'm sure that they're going to waive all sorts of appearance money, like a big dangling carrot, right in front of all the players and things like that. And they're going to wait and see who takes them up on it. And one guy that actually said he could take them up on it is Lee Westwood, that says at this point in his career, you know what? What's his allegiance to the PGA Tour? But Rory McIlroy last year, point blank, said no, absolutely not, that he considers himself a PGA Tour player. as well as probably a European Tour player, and does not want to do anything to jeopardize any of that. Because something else that might also take place would also be the idea of, if you play on that tour, you may or may not be eligible to play in Ryder Cups or play in majors. So that's kind of floating out there too.
Well, you're going to be able to get world ranking points, from my understanding, and by earning world ranking points, you thus qualify for the majors. It will clearly depend on strength of field, and again, that's if all this comes to fruition. Hey, Barn, we only have a minute or two left here. I wanted to tell you a story. It's not I am so stupid. It is people are so stupid. I went to the World Series Game 5 in Atlanta on Halloween, and I went with my best buddy since I was 2 years old, lifelong Braves fans. And I said, well, it's Halloween. We've got to get dressed up. Everybody will be dressed up. So we went as Maverick and Goose from the movie Top Gun. We had jumpsuits that said Maverick, that said Goose, and had big Top Gun patches everywhere, and they're made of flimsy cotton. Well, it turns out nobody at the game was dressed up, like one or two other people that we saw. And people kept thanking us for our service. People kept saying, hey, nice landing, because they had done a military parachute into the stadium before the game. So people were thanking us for our service. People were asking if we were the one who did the flyover, and nice landing. And we obviously can't take credit, so we had to keep telling everybody, no, it's costumes, it's costumes. And you should have seen their look on their faces. It took them a while to remember, oh, it's Halloween. But we were standing in line to get food, and all of a sudden, one of the workers just walks out from behind. Just a long line. It's an hour-long line, and just brings us our food. And then we realized, oh, no, we can't do this. So I had to give him a big tip. But I just thought, come on, people, it's Halloween, and we were in the nosebleeds. If we had been the ones landing on the field, no chance they put us in the nosebleeds. But I will say, if this is how our military personnel, men and women, get treated, keep doing it, America, because it was almost every other person said thank you. Of course, we had to stop them and tell them no, but you're welcome to buy us a beer anyway. Anyway, so that's people are so stupid. Hey, Jordan Spieth, one last note here. Barn, you were saying he didn't even play, and he got better.
Yeah, unbelievable that Jordan Spieth was 13th in the world. He was 13th in the world a week ago, and then he doesn't play, and somehow he's not 10th in the world.
Hey,
So help me understand. But in the meantime, Ned, it's also the first time in 3 years that he's been top 10 in the world.
And on that, Barney, we'll see you next week.
Okay.
If we're talking about Greg Norman and professional golfers coming out of Australia, well, you've got to go straight to the source. You've got to go to an Aussie. So I'm going to bring in a voice that you will certainly recognize. He's a lifelong broadcaster. He's done everything from the Olympics and rugby to the Masters and the U.S. Open. You'll hear him on the Golf Channel, CBS. I have the privilege to call him my partner on Masters.com from holes 15 and 16. My man, Luke Elvey. Well, Luke, some would say that it's not a comeback. Australian golf never left. I would say just look at, 3 or 4 years ago, not a single Australian won on the PGA Tour. So I'm just looking at it through the eyes of the PGA Tour, world professional men's golf. The women's, in this case, a different topic because there are a lot of fantastic women out there. But the men, is there a resurgence? Is there, now we're going to start to see these young Australians, Lucas Herbert, who won last week? I mean, are they coming back?
Yeah, it's more of a transition, Ned, than a resurgence. The last decade was basically Jason Day and Adam Scott thriving with a bit of Mark Leishman thrown in and the occasional other winner, where it be a Matt Jones or an earlier in the times a Rod Pampling or a Greg Chalmers, whoever names I picked, they all poached a victory here or there. But in the tail end of last decade into the start of this one, Cameron Smith has started to emerge. Mark Leishman is stepping up continually and delivering on that enormous talent that everyone saw. I mean, there was one time he was voted the most underrated player on tour. And then more recently, we've now started to see the likes of Lucas Herbert come to the fore, both in Europe and on the PGA Tour. And it's exciting, but it's just the next wave coming through. It's a generational sort of shift more than a resurgence, if you will, for the Australian players on the tour.
Well, I go back to the horrible wildfires that you all had. That was the year prior. No Australian had won on the PGA Tour. And then all of a sudden, it was Leishman winning out at the Farmers Insurance Open in San Diego. And then you just saw them stack on top of each other. And it was almost like there was some momentum that was gathering. And you can see it now with these younger players starting to come up. Do you think that as we go into the next kind of 2 or 3 years, you expect them to continue to have this kind of success?
We expect all the time our boys do well on a global stage. I think it's more a wish than expect. The wildfires you talk about actually occurred right around the President's Cup being hosted in Australia in 2019, the start of 2020. I was back in Australia during that time, and it was a really shocking time for the nation because a lot of major parts of the nation burnt. Yes, a lot of the outback burnt, but a lot of major capital cities or parts of Australia burnt. And it was a terrifying time because we all know how powerful wildfires can be. And straight off the back of that, they went on a bit of a surge to start 2020. Cam Smith won in Hawaii. You mentioned Mark Leishman. We had Lucas Herbert win over in Europe alongside Wade Ormsby winning the Hong Kong Open, which sort of started it all for Australia. And then Adam Scott won at Riviera just before the pandemic hit. And it was this, oh my gosh, how good's this for Australian golf? It's the wins are stacking up and they all sort of feed off each other. But it was more circumstantial than cause and effect because of the wildfires. And then pandemic hit, we went into this lull. I don't think there has been a group of golfers more impacted in the world than those who live in far-reaching places like Australia and New Zealand and Asia to try and continue to make a living. So I think that the bit of a lull happened again for those Aussies who haven't been around the world, the border restrictions, so many elements to it that have been a huge impact on them. Adam Scott's career has basically fallen off a cliff because of it. They're resilient. Aussies are resilient by nature. They're resourceful. They'll find a way. And what I am looking forward to is Cam Smith and Lucas Herbert sort of being the Jason Day and Adam Scott of the 2010s. I believe these two will be that version for the 2020s.
The reason that Luke and I were smiling so big when he mentioned Cam Smith is because at the Masters, I think it was
2020. Yeah, it was the fall Masters.
It was 2020. Yeah. And I said something. This guy's really good. He does everything pretty well, but nothing jumps out. and you looked at me.
It's not too right across the face on air, I think. And I just said, this guy's got arguably the best short game on earth, one of the best wedge players on earth. And Bubba Watson told me that story. We were at Riviera and he played alongside Bubba in the final group at Riv when Bubba won his third. And he just said to Cam Smith, "You're the best wedge player I've ever seen." Now, Bubba Watson's telling you that. That's got to instill a bit of confidence in you. So I knew straight away he had a pretty red-hot wedge game.
And then he goes on and nearly wins the darn thing.
And he got up and down out of ball washers over the next 3 or 4 holes while we were watching, and you were like, oh, my God, no, you're right.
Remember on Sunday, so again, Luke and I working 15 and 16 for Masters.com, and he is left of left. He's over in the water fountain on 15 thinking, well, this would be a good 6, really.
He is back near the 16th tee. He is over Saracen Bridge behind the water fountain next to the 16th tee. Got it up and down.
All right, Cam Smith's my man. Short game. One thing I love about Australians in general as sports people, but specifically golfers, you don't ever really get the sense that they're envious of one another. It's more when one of them wins, everybody celebrates. Where does that come from? Yeah,
the Aussie mate, get around them mentality. Lift them up. If everyone's doing well, we'll all succeed together. And a lot of the players have talked to me about this because we had a period of time in the first decade of this century, the noughties, if you will, where a bunch of guys win a bunch of times a year. And they'd go and have an Australian barbecue to celebrate that person's win, whether it be the Stuart Appleby's, the Robert Allenby's, Jeff Ogilvy's, Aaron Baddeley's, Adam Scott's, whoever it may have been. They go, beauty, another barbecue. But we want the other to succeed. We are cheering for them to succeed. That old Aussie mate situation. But at the same time, they all say, well, hang on, I played with him in a practice round Tuesday and smoked him 7 and 6. I can beat him. I'm good. I'm as good as him. So that inspires them to step up and win because they get belief in themselves because of someone else winning. So they feed off each other.
Well, a man who fed off of PGA Tour players and tournaments for years, the great white shark, Greg Norman. He has a new role now. as CEO, president.
He didn't feed, he feasted.
Yes, he did.
Greg was the man, the great white shark. He consumed all before him.
He did. He was world number one for more weeks than any other player at the time. Of course, Tiger took that mantle.
Well, he was Tiger before Tiger.
He was Tiger before Tiger. That's right. I mean, he had that kind of star appeal. When Greg Norman showed up, that's where people were. But now he's taken on a new role with the Saudi Arabian money, as I would say, whether it's going to be called Premier League, whatever it's going to be called. I'm curious your thoughts on that. And do you think Greg Norman will turn his attention back to Australia and try to put together what used to be a very robust tournament schedule in Australia that has really very much deteriorated over the past decade?
Well, let me answer that part of it first, Ned. I got asked this question this year while I was in the broadcast. What happened to the Australian Tour? It used to be unbelievable. It was like 6 months of the year and all the best players would go down there and play. And I said, the PGA Tour happened to the Australian Tour. The PGA Tour used to run from March to September, 6 months. So the guys had a massive off-season. So they'd pack their bags, they'd come to Australia and they'd peg it up, they'd get themselves ready for the new season. Jack Nicklaus, Lee Trevino, obviously Arnie before them. Greats of the game would come to Australia. Mark Calcavecchia feasted down there for years. They'd come, they'd win, build their confidence and go and have a great PGA Tour season. Players from all around the world came to Australia. And Greg was right in the centre of that from the late 70s through to the start of this century. And when we had the number one player in the world, being Australian, and in a flourishing tour, life was grand. But the downturn of Greg's career, or let's say the finishing of his playing career, coupled with the fact that the PGA Tour has evolved into this global giant where it is now 3 weeks of the year that they don't play and then that's it. So there's 47 or 48 weeks a year where the PGA Tour is on. There's no room. We got squeezed out. We didn't have a big name to carry us through, so we couldn't champion that. We didn't have the money that the PGA Tour had and this massive backing of all the best players in the world. So what happens? It's like the rules of the jungle. Only the strong survive. And Australian golf, sadly through some failings of its own with administration, it started to struggle. And it's now to the point where it's on life support.
Do you think Greg Norman is the man to bring it back? And the Saudi money, there's a lot of debates there. You can debate the morality of it, but I'm not asking you about that part. I'm asking you about the business side of it and what Greg Norman is doing now for the Asian Tour. And as I was telling Barney earlier in the show, I still have status out there, past champion status. I'm playing for some money.
Get practicing, buddy. Yeah. Go and feast on the millions. Look, Greg is one of the most dynamic businessmen golf's ever seen as well. Arnold Palmer had relationships with people that helped make him his mega millions, and he was just this iconic human that everyone adored, so that was successful. But Greg started these businesses. Greg pursued these types of things. And it's no surprise to me that Greg's involved with this, none whatsoever. He's always thought outside the box, outside the square, if you will. And I really like where he's going with this. And I know they were forced into a corner because the PGA Tour has sort of negated all those sort of Premier League or Saudi-backed previous bids for golf to expand. Now, the Asian Tour, desperately crying out for money, desperately crying out for this huge support. And Greg, with his original relationship, because it used to be the PGA Tour of Australasia. It wasn't just the Asian Tour. So that encompassed all that. And I have no doubt he's going to try and get some tournaments back in Australia, grow the game in that region. And this is what I keep saying to everyone. Stop ignoring Asia as a region. There is triple the population there than anywhere else on earth. They just get 1 or 2 more % of people like golf, and it's exploding.
Luke, always such a pleasure to be with you. Good luck on the endeavor, and good luck to Australian golf in the future.
Thank you, Ned. I've got my fingers crossed for both.
You're looking for a vacation, maybe somewhere you haven't been before, somewhere off the beaten path? Consider Mississippi. You can jump on their website, visitmississippi.org. They had the state fair going on just a couple of weeks ago. They had the PGA Tour in Jackson, Mississippi, the Sanderson Farms Championship. Cruising the Coast, the best automobile show in the country. Deion Sanders, Jackson State. They had 52,000 fans turn up last week at the Jackson State football game. There's so much to do in Mississippi. You can hit the coast, you can gamble a little bit, bet on the sports book, play golf. If you love music, the Grammy Museum, just check it out. Visit Mississippi.org. You may remember back a couple of episodes ago, we talked about how the rules of amateur golf were changing. And I had just some clarification questions that I wanted answered. So Craig Winter, he's the Senior Director of Rules of Golf and Amateur Status for the United States Golf Association. He's joining us now to help answer my questions. Just summarize for me the main changes that were made to the amateur status qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely, Ned, and it's been a while, so good to chat with you. The main changes that most recreational club golfers are going to see, it's actually pretty simple for them. There's an increase in the prize limit. The rules today allow for $750 in shop credit, essentially, vouchers, etc., but that's moving up to $1,000. That speaks to, I'm going to get a little bit off of your question, but that speaks to what we heard in feedback. It's so important to us to, especially when we make changes that are this significant, we've rewritten the entire set of rules. We listen, and what came back in that feedback was that golfers, by and large, the amateur game's in a good spot, and we want to continue to celebrate that. And we didn't really see a huge need or a call for changes at the club level. And so most golfers at the club level, they're going to be seeing that increase in prize limit to $1,000. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of change for them outside of the rules being more focused. So we no longer look at putting contests, long drive contests, even some of the side games that might happen. You know, you're at a club event and then at the turn there happens to be a putt for charity on the practice putting green. Those things are no longer governed by the rules of amateur status. And so that's a really good change, that we're really focused on what's called tee to hole competitions within the rules themselves. And it gets us out of, Top Golf, if you want to throw out some brands. We're just not looking at those areas anymore. And we think that's a really good thing for basically the growth of the game. So many golfers get into golf through those types of avenues. And it's exciting for us to be able to just look at really what is golf about in amateur status. And it's about minimizing the pressure on the rules and minimizing the pressure on handicapping. And we felt like tee to green competitions are the right way to go there. Changes for the elite player is a little bit different, and we can get into that.
Just to go to the evolution of amateur status, and it always impresses me how far forward-thinking you all at the USGA and the R&A have to be. But an example of my uncle, who made a hole-in-one in a charity event a couple of weeks ago, and he won a Maserati. It used to be that in order to claim that, you had to turn pro. But again, as you all look ahead, that rule has changed. You no longer have to be pro. He's taking the Maserati and he donated it back to the charity.
Yeah, thinking that Maserati is worth a little more than $1,000. We look at hole-in-ones, and we've been here since the early 2000s, that this is probably more luck than skill. I don't want to judge your uncle and his golf skill itself, but we've been there for quite some time. That fits outside the prize rules, whether it's a Maserati or it's something a little bit more, we'll say, practical to get around town. That's not something that's affected by the prize limit. So good for him. That's great.
Something that has caught my attention, and it has been a big subject of conversation outside of golf, is the collegiate NCAA NIL, the ability to take money for your likeness. The amateur rules now, when they change, January 1st of 2022, if I'm understanding correctly, golfers will now have this same avenue to earn income.
College space, it's interesting. We've had this conversation, just especially in the U.S., around collegiate players. Now, that's a very, it's the age-specific college player. They're mostly elite players, whether it's golf or any other sport. That's been driven by, look, these football players, basketball players, they're going to get their, we'll just say, millions. And why shouldn't they be able to get that now? Their schools, et cetera, are making that at this time with their skill and their name, image, and likeness. That's not at all where we've come at this from. It's been very much about the local level. The name, image, likeness rules, they're being completely eliminated from the 2022 code. And you're right, January 1 is when that's going to go into effect. And where we see this coming from, and the whole reason that we're doing this, it's the local golfer that wants to play tournament golf. It perhaps needs to travel, whether it's local, whether it's regional, whether it's international. It's not cheap to play golf at a high level, especially competitive golf. And we do think that there's going to be a lot of businesses at the local level that will look at young talent and say, yeah, we want to support him or her and give that golfer a chance. And we think that it's a good place for our business to invest some promotional funds. And organically, we just think that this is more inclusive. Candidly, Ned, we think 10 years down the road, and this is probably the thing that we're most excited about with these new rules, is to say the face of golf could change because of this one change. Now, when you tie it into the collegiate game, just because of what the NCAA did this summer where they've backed out of their legislative role in that area, we made a move as well. It's a waiver that's effectively temporary, but it's going to be in place until the end of the year, where if you're a collegiate golfer, you can already explore those areas. You're effectively not governed by this area of the rules. But you're right to say that January 1 comes around and it opens up to all players, and we're just really excited about what will happen. It's not just the junior player, but primarily that's where it's going to be affecting the game of golf, we think, where a parent might go to in a place of employment or just a business that they frequent and say, can you help? And now you can have that free exchange. That business can talk quite proudly about their support of a player, and the player can thank the business. And we just think that's going to open the doors for more players to be able to access this great game. It gives so much to those that are in and around it. And we all know that, that. And we think that it just opens the doors for more to be able to take part in that.
It's a great initiative, just given the social media exposure now that these players have access to. And as you were saying, local businesses. I did have one question, though, because I just want to read this. I was a little confused. It says, attention prospective student athletes. This interim guidance applies only to collegiate golfers. If you are still a prospective student athlete, Rule 6 of the Rules of Amateur Status still applies to any action you take to benefit from your name, image, or likeness. What does that mean?
Yeah, no, that's based on the announcement that we made back in July, and it was a reaction to what was happening at the NCAA level. When the NCAA on July 1 stopped regulating and name, image, and likeness and turned that over to schools and states, we felt like we had to do something so the college golfer wasn't kind of stuck in the middle. We've been comfortable with lifting name, image, likeness rules since 2017, and we went to the NCAA, told them that we were going this direction. Privately, it's another stakeholder feedback opportunity that we've had. They're great partners of ours, and we raised some eyebrows. Now, obviously, NCAA has completed that part of stepping away from that as well. Our rules weren't ever scheduled to go into effect until 22, so we had to do something in this 6-month gap. And we felt like the most practical thing to do and the best thing for those collegiate golfers was to say, look, you can already start benefiting from your name, image, and likeness. But that's just based on what the NCAA did. That's 20,000 players. And you think of the millions and millions of amateur golfers all around the world. We weren't prepared to just drop the rules for everyone. We needed to educate golfers. We needed to educate all the governing bodies. And so we felt like it was very good to keep it specific to that. The NCAA still has some regulation, schools, compliance departments. We were comfortable with that small group of folks, but the prospective student athlete that you speak to, they're not yet a collegiate golfer. They're not governed by the NCAA. If they want to maintain their amateur status, they still need to follow the rules as they are today. Obviously, the announcement in 22, speaking to the new rules, things are going to change for them. But up to then, they still need to pay attention to the rules as they are, and they can't yet benefit from their name, image, or likeness.
Okay, so that makes sense. So January 1st of 2022, then they will be able to, because the way I was thinking about it was junior golfers, 13, 14, 15-year-old, that they weren't going to be able, you had to be in college, but that's not the case as of January 1, 2022. This is open to all amateur golfers, whether you're 7 or 17 or 70.
That's right. Yep. January 1's their date.
You guys are always on it, always evolving. Thanks for all your hard work and what you all do up there at the USGA for the game of golf. Craig Winter, appreciate you joining us here on Breaking Even. Fair warning, go ahead, grab your pencil and a pad of paper because the coach, Jonathan Coachman, he's with us here on Breaking Even. He's going to give us some picks, props. We're going to talk about the world of golf. And, Coach, you actually have an interesting take right now on the fall tournaments and what's happening on these really windy, tough, but also scoreable golf courses. Before we get there, though,
Yep.
World Series, how'd we make out?
For our show at the Early Edge, and it's the #1 betting show in all of America, we did not do very well because we were on the Astros. We were riding with them all the way through. Congratulations goes out, Ned, to the Atlanta Braves. I said before the playoffs even started They were without one of their best players in Acuna. I didn't think they had the pitching to get it done. They proved me wrong, so you got to give props where props are due. But more than just that, there were some really cool stories, Ned, that surround the World Series and the world of sports betting, which is what I live in every single day. Have you ever heard of Mattress Mac?
Just enough to kind of know, but give me the details.
Well, Mattress Mac is I was around him a lot when I was in my WWE wrestling days. He's a big personality down in the state of Texas, has the biggest furniture store brand in Texas, maybe in the country, and he loves to do these big bets on his Astros or any Houston team. He's diehard Houston. So he made a few bets before the season, basically like 16-1, 17-1. He would have won $35 million on the World Series if the Astros would have won. He ended up losing a little bit over $3 million. The brilliance of him, though, Ned, is that he gets so much press and so much coverage when he makes these big bets that his sales skyrocket. So he's actually just investing in himself. Plus, he's in his 80s. So he's the type of multimillionaire that I hope that I could be one day, where you have fun, you want to take care of people, and you just enjoy your money for what it is. And it's just kind of a cool story. It would have been greater if he would have won, because it would have been the biggest payout, legal payout, in sports history in the United States.
First of all, when you become a billionaire, I want to be just continue to be your friend. So when you're a billionaire, because you're the kind of guy who is just going to say, hey, I'm sending my plane for you. Jump on it and come out to the football game. Yeah, so just keep in mind when you hit the billion.
I will say this, because people ask me all the time. I was very, very close with Vince McMahon back in the day, and I used to ride on his private jet all the time. I'm talking for a year or 2 years consistently every single week. So I got to see firsthand, and I was literally right next to him all the time, how a billionaire moves, how he thinks, how he, and I've always said part of the reason I left ESPN, to be brutally honest with you, I want to be an executive one day. I want to lead a network. I want to lead people. And I saw that. Now, there are good and bads with that, but you got to see it firsthand, and I'll take the good and leave the bad. But being that close to somebody like that is an invaluable experience.
Absolutely. And I wonder if this mattress fella can write this off as a marketing expense. $3 million is write off.
Guaranteed he has the best accountants in America. But yeah, I'm sure he's not hurting today. He'll be fine.
So you weren't able to join us last week because you're the Professional Fighting League all day. So I tried to step in and offer some tips on gambling. I just picked out three. I saw a lot of Adam Hadwin's to win last week, and I had some theories on why maybe you should fade on that bet. I had a Kiradech Apabonrat top 5, and then a Pereira bet head-to-head. I don't remember exactly what it was. But what I found in this deal, when you're looking at these fall tournaments, especially when you go to these windy places, Bermuda last week, you're at Mayakoba this week, it's pretty doggone tough to get any of these things right.
Well, it's damn near impossible. And me not being on the show last week was kind of a metaphor for what everybody should have done, and that is stay away. Sometimes, and I struggle with it a lot myself, the best bets to make are the bets that you don't make, because you absolutely don't know what's going on. And in the morning, the wind might blow, but then in the afternoon, it can come down. So you got one wave shooting 63s and the other wave shooting 78s. On top of that, you did have Patrick Reed last week. He did finish second. Lucas Herbert from Australia wins. But the thing about it is, it was the first time, I believe, in the history, Ned, of the PGA Tour ever that every single alternate got into the tournament, because every player was just backing out, because the winds were crazy. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't want to go down there. It's kind of a hard trip, especially with COVID. And so every player that was on the alternate list got in. When you have that, there's so much volatility, you just stay away. Now, this week there are some big names, but I would recommend more of the same. You just don't know what's going to happen, and you don't want to coin flip when you are betting. That's a recipe for disaster.
It's a good tip, because that's what this is going to be. Wind is predicted, and as you said, you might get a morning, you might get an afternoon. Maybe you could go with a head-to-head because you know the guys are going to be in the same conditions. But as I was saying to Barney earlier in the show, the one thing you have to do well at this golf course is find the fairway. So if you are going to bet this week, Take somebody who is going to find the fairway, whether it's with a 3-wood driver or whatever, because there are big numbers lurking all over this Mayakoba golf course.
Yeah, let me say this, because I actually, right before I came on this morning, I read an article by Jason Sobel of the Action Network, who I have a lot of respect for, and
Absolutely.
I work with him at the PGA Tour on PGA Tour Live, and he had a great few paragraphs about a conversation he had with Brendan Steele. And most players will not talk about betting because they don't even want to be attached to it. There's so many things that can happen to a player. If they're caught betting, they just can't do it. But he did have some really good insight into what the mentality should be if you want to bet on golf. And basically he said this: find 3 or 4 players that are very consistent, that are solid. You're not going to win every single bet on them, but what's going to happen over the course of time is that you will win on them, like a Xander or a Patrick Cantlay. He said you bet on those guys consistently in head-to-head matchups to top 20 finish as long as the number is right, and over the course of time, they're so consistent that, and I thought it was a really cool way to look about it, because I do it. Somebody plays bad one week, Ned, and the automatic thing that you do is you fade them the next week. They're not playing well right now. But he said, Brendan Steele said, that they might find something on a Wednesday, and you know this. You might find something on a Wednesday night, and it clicks. And then all of a sudden, you go out, and you couldn't even hit it straight in your Pro-Am, and you shoot a 62 on Thursday morning. That's how volatile a player can be. So he said, stick with certain players, believe in them, and I think that is great advice.
That is great advice, because if you're a consistent guy, just using a Xander, for example, when it clicks, it really clicks. So if you're picking guys who are kind of mercurial and have these big ebb and flows to their games, they are less likely to have it click and then go on to a top finish. But those top 20 guys in the world, when it clicks and they start playing well, you're almost guaranteed that they're going to have a top 20, probably top 10, somewhere in there. So I like that. I like that advice. Interesting, too, that you're starting to hear some commentary from the players, or at least Brendan Steele, because this is right now a big topic that is still taboo, because for so long, we, the players, weren't able to put any type of logoing or any type of sponsorships that had to do with casinos or gambling anywhere on our bags or our shirts or anything. So it still is kind of a taboo subject.
It really is. But here's the thing, and this is where, and I think the PGA Tour is doing a really good job of this, because they are an organization that, as far as sports is concerned, that has notoriously been very conservative, because it's the world of golf.
As they should be.
100%. And now this is an avenue that can really increase dollars for players, for the tour, and ultimately add to the kiddies, so to speak, on how much money people can make. Because you've got so many sports books out there now, Ned, that need to have people playing them. So a BetMGM or a Caesars, who is our sports book at CBS, they need, it's great to have a big name, but you got to have people playing, right? So how do you have people playing? Well, you got to promote. And how do you promote? Well, you got to go out to athletes who are, it's a simple process, but they have to get past, it's a casino, it's a sports book. This is normal now. It's been normal around the world for years, and it's just now becoming normal here in the United States. Just like a college player getting paid to do something, that's long overdue. We're seeing that across the board. So right now, people need to understand, and players need to understand, this is going to be a great way they can make a nice little side check by putting a little logo on their bag, and then they can't say, well, I don't have any sponsorship dollars. Because Ned, players complain about that all the time. Well, don't be a robot. Have some personality, and guess what comes with that? Companies that want to sponsor you.
You said it all when you said it, Coach. Hey, give me a NFL pick like you do every week.
Last week was a brutal week for people across the board. It was one of those weeks where so many crazy things happened, and the sports books cleaned up. When the Philadelphia Eagles, Ned, score over 40 points, and their starting quarterback throws for less than 110 yards, that's a crazy week. That's a crazy week. So this week, a couple of things that we really like. Panthers, Patriots. There's still not a belief that they can score. There's still not a belief. So we like the over 41 this week, and the Patriots are the hidden gem of the NFL right now. Mac Jones, rookie quarterback, is tremendous, and Bill Belichick is doing a great job with that very, very young team. Also, don't sleep on the Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, they got beat by the New York Jets, but it was one of the great performances, Ned, that we've seen by a quarterback maybe ever coming in as a backup in Mike White. One guy, by the way, Ned, bet $1,000.
I saw this.
Did you see that? On Mike White to lead the NFL in passing yards for the week. at 125-1. He won $125,000 on that. Thank you very much. Now, if that dude is doing that, he's doing a lot of other stupid bets too that he's not hitting. So that $125,000 probably will be gone, but at least he won it. So we like the Bengals there. We also like the Giants -2.5 over the Raiders. We believe that with everything going on with the Raiders, it's been incredibly an emotional 3 weeks, a very, very sad 3 weeks with Henry Ruggs and the DUI and the death of a person in that car accident. So they still have to play somehow. They still have to get through all of that. And we just don't believe they'll be able to do that traveling all the way to New York. So Giants, Bengals, and the over in the Patriots and the Panthers game.
You heard the word right here with Jonathan Coachman, as I ask you every time, because you really are everywhere. What's the best way to find you all?
We're really rolling right now. Early Edge is our brand. If you follow our YouTube channel, YouTube is just exploding right now, and that's the easiest place to find all of our content. Because what you can do, Ned, you subscribe, it's free, and then you turn on the notifications, and every time we do something, and we have a morning show, every single day we have an evening show. We do special shows on Champions League soccer, on the UFC, on golf when it's golf season, like January to August. We do all of that on one channel, and I host it all. So you do that, you can find us all the time.
You do host it all. You are the busiest man in sports betting as far as I can tell. So, Coachman, always appreciate you dropping some knowledge on us.
Breaking Even is brought to you by Risk Reversal Media. You can find us at riskreversal.com and check out our podcast, On the Tape. Each week, Guy Adami, Danny Moses, and me, Dan Nathan, discuss the biggest market-moving headlines and chat with some of the most influential people on Wall Street, all in an effort to help our listeners make smarter investment decisions. So follow us On the Tape in your preferred podcast store.
You better buckle up, boys and girls, because Risk Reversal Dan Nathan and Guy Adami are with us, and we're going to talk about something besides the World Series. Thank you very much. Go Braves, bringing home the big win, Game 6 in Houston. You're welcome. We're going to talk about the metaverse because I'm very confused on what TF is the metaverse.
What TF? Okay, I got it. I know the answer to this, by the way, Ned. Can I go first, please?
Yeah, please. Guy Adami, hit me. What is the metaverse, and how does it apply to our world?
First of all, congratulations to the Atlanta Braves. 1-6, as I said that would happen on the Tape podcast recently, Dan Nathan. The metaverse is very simple. It's a world where Ron Artest is drafted by the New York Knicks out of St. John's, and they go on to win 4 NBA championships. That is the metaverse. Back to you.
Nailed it. Dan Nathan?
Why are we talking about this, Ned? Because Mark Zuckerberg, he is the founder of the Facebook. He is changing the name of the company, Facebook, to Meta, and he's going to, I don't know, they're going to become a metaverse company. So everyone is asking themselves, what is this thing? Because we all spend so much time in technology, using technology, interacting with technology, we kind of feel like we already are there. I think really what it means and the way that some of these technologists think about it, and there's been sci-fi writers who've been talking about it for decades and decades, it really is just a virtual world, right? And I think if you have young kids and your kids play Minecraft or they play Roblox and it's an interconnected sort of thing, and there's means of transacting in there, I mean, that really is what a metaverse is. It's just kind of this virtual world where you are in there. You have an avatar for yourself. You have a means of transaction, and that could be, some form of crypto sort of currency. You do things to kind of show off identity and culture and things that you're interested in. And I think that's really kind of where it's going. Here's the one thing, though, Ned. You need hardware to get there, man. It's not just like being plugged into the Matrix, and then you're living this world. You need to wear those Oculus, you've seen those Oculus things. Facebook bought that company. That's kind of how you enter it. Every hardware company is going to have their own vision of the metaverse, and there's not going to be just one metaverse. That's the other thing. There's going to be multiple. So think about Minecraft is possibly one. Roblox is possibly another, if that makes sense.
So if your life isn't miserable enough in reality, you can make it more miserable in this metaverse. It's for people. Listen, I'm going to be 58 in about a month and a half, give or take. Doesn't really matter. I will tell you without equivocation, Ned, there is no effing way I'm going to visit the metaverse or any other verse on Facebook or any other platform.
So it sounds like one big catfish waiting to happen. To your point of everybody looks good in the metaverse because you can do whatever you want. Now, to your point, it does take hardware, and you're going to have an avatar and be able to dress it up, and that stuff's going to start costing money. So in order to really have the Louis Vuitton bag or whatever it is in the metaverse, you're going to start paying for it. But I do wonder, World Series, for example. I was lucky enough to go to Game 5 in Atlanta. I had got on Ticketmaster that Tuesday morning and was able to get 2 tickets, for face value. But I wonder, could you put on the Oculus and then they're going to sell tickets and they have different cameras that they charge different amounts for, one right behind home plate and then one in the nosebleeds. But so then you get this 3D experience of actually being at the game, but it's a quarter of the cost or something along the lines of what it is to be in real life. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think that is one application. I mean, I think that you're going to find that different consumers are going to have different interests. People of our age are always going to prefer to be there, to drink that warm beer, sitting up there in the left field, stands and kind of getting the feel and the smell of the park and that sort of thing, right? But there's others who just prefer to watch on their OLED, 85-inch on their lazy boy and have their wife bring them a beer. Here, all right, guys. Going to say, you got to clip that. I know he's going to do it, aren't you?
You got to clip that. I mean, that we're taking out for sure. Again, let me just say this. I mean, that's great. Enjoy. You put your Oculus Prime glasses on and have a ball. I mean, it's such complete horseshit. Listen, let's just call a spade here. Facebook changed their name to, what do they call it, Dan?
Meta.
Meta, because they have an image issue, and that's it.
Yeah, guys, the issue they have is that they're seeing young people leave their platforms in droves, right? And so they don't have services right now that are interesting to young people, which means that young people who are coming up are not going to be interested in their services. So they're losing people from Insta to TikTok. No one uses their blue web page anymore, right? It's a bunch of old people. And I'll just say this, is that this is not a construct that's made for boomers. They don't care about us as the people that are making these different metaverses and thinking about how hardware is going to interact with new experiences in a virtual world. They are not contemplating what Guy Adami cares about. They're not. And that's really, I guess, the main takeaway right here. So maybe we'll get some sort of millennial on to discuss this at another point, Ed.
That is true. I mean, it's clearly not meant, and all kidding aside, it's clearly not meant for people like myself, which is fine. I mean, they're trying to attract an audience, obviously, that TikTok has done in extraordinary fashion. So I think Facebook or Meta, whatever they're calling themselves now, is years behind, but they can catch up very quickly just given the platform and the user base that they have.
So just a quick story from the World Series. You talked about the sights and the sounds and the smell of the game. They had just finished the national anthem, and all of a sudden this stuff kind of came spraying down on us. Like somebody had shook up a beer and was celebrating. And I thought, we just sang the national anthem. It's a little early here to be celebrating the win. And we turned around, and the guy in the row behind us is just puking all over the place.
No.
Picking chunks out of my hair, it's on my buddy's face kind of deal. I mean, had we been anywhere else, we're out of there immediately. So the sights and the sounds and the smells of this particular, at least the first 5 innings, not so great. I would have preferred to have been in the metaverse. I could have avoided being puked on.
By the way, how fired up were you after one inning, Ned, 4-zip Braves? I mean, You're saying to yourselves, I'm about to watch my beloved Atlanta Braves win the World Series here in Atlanta. You were jacked.
It was incredible. Everybody in the stadium, including the team, thought it was over. And to the credit of the Astros, they ended up pounding us. But anyway, we got it done in 6, as you said. So the metaverse is interesting. I get it, but at some point, don't you have to interact with humans on a face-to-face basis? Or is the society really getting pushed away from that long term?
Well, we've seen this really a concept you're going to keep hearing about is the attention economy, right? And when you think about all of a sudden, that these kids, there's so many things tugging at their attention. And you guys, if you have young ones, you see that they are outside playing much less than we were, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that whole idea of turn off the TV, and then it was turn off the Atari, then it was turn off the Sega. Now think about, they literally have a supercomputer in their pockets 24/7, and good luck trying to get that away from the kids here today. So I guess at the end of the day, Zuckerberg's vision for a metaverse, and he laid it out, he really sees it as a consumer sort of application, and he sees it as multiple ways that how you're going to interact, and it's going to be competing for your attention IRL or in the real world, as the kids say, but it's also an enterprise application. And they were going to make a very strong case of how this new work from home thing is only going to be accelerated by the ability to kind of go into a metaverse and collaborate from a work standpoint. And so, listen, I think his vision makes sense. Whether he is the overlord of the metaverse, that's going to be another topic of conversation.
IRL, this is true. I do some of the esports. I commentate esports, and the analyst who I'm with will say, in real life, and it just throws me for a loop. In real life, Guy Adami, we have 1 minute left here. Give me an update on the oil trade. I ask you about it just about every week, so give me, where are your thoughts on it now? Is it still looking strong?
I think so. I mean, it's obviously, listen, we ran into a bit of some headwinds, back and fill, as they say, but I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. There seems to be the demand pressure still seems to be there. And oh, by the way, the supply pressures are there as well. So I think crude continues to go higher into year end, Ned.
Can I put Meta oil into my car? Does that work?
Without question, I'm sure you'll get tremendous gas mileage in Mark Zuckerberg's world.
All right, so Ned, you had us on to talk about the metaverse, but we actually on the tape, which you have also been a guest of on the tape, we had a crew talking about the metaverse. We had Packy McCormick of Not Boring, we had Jared Dicker of the Churning Group, and we had Meltem Demers of CoinShares. And these are all three millennials. They are all in the metaverse, spending a lot of time in there. And we asked the same question: WTF is the metaverse? So check that out. And maybe we'll have one of these geniuses come on and drop some knowledge on you in a future episode of Breaking Even.
Absolutely. Check out the YouTube channel, Risk Reversal, and subscribe. Guy, Dan, as always, thanks. Thanks for listening to Breaking Even with me, Ned Michaels. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit follow in the podcast store and leave us a review. It helps people find our show. Follow us on Twitter at Breaking Even Pod. Or you can also find me at Ned Michaels. And remember, we'll be back next Thursday for more Breaking Even, which is brought to you by Visit Mississippi. Jump online, visit Mississippi.org. See everything that's going on down there.